So, welcome to our session about digital sovereignty. And first in our agenda, we'll talk a little bit how we define digital sovereignty. There are different definitions out there, and certainly we'll settle on a particular one. As part of that, there are also levels of digital sovereignty. So you can be fully sovereign, or you can have a low level of data sovereignty and lack certain things. Then we're going to talk about how United States corporations, United States cloud services influence our sovereignty in that regards. Of course, a lot of that is true for countries like China or Russia as well. However, typically it's US-based cloud services which are used from our corporations. And then we talk about where to start. So by assessing your level of digital sovereignty, and you determine that there are challenges and you don't have a full level of sovereignty everywhere, what to do, how to start, what's next. And after about 20 minutes, we're happy to take some question and answers, and hope you're going to stay with us for that. Yeah, so how do we define digital sovereignty? There are different definitions out there. We have chosen to discuss with you today a particular one, which is coming out of a digital conference in Germany hosted by the government, the so-called Digitalgipfel. And in 2019, it was said that digital sovereignty really of any organization, be it a government agency, be it a company or a non-profit organization, really includes a complete control over stored as well as processed data. So any type of metadata is certainly included in processed data. Metadata is who talks with whom about what. And you and only you can make independent decisions on who may access this data. And this also includes the ability to independently develop, modify, control, and supplement technological components and systems with other components, which means you need to have some flexibility there. So this boils down for us really to 5 points. Digital sovereignty is a prerequisite for independent decisions, for your independent decisions. It promotes competition, agility, and innovation. It decreases vendor lock-in, and it lowers barriers to market entry because you like to motivate others to come also to the market and maybe make you even better offerings. And if they do so, you like to be able to take all your data and all your process data and go to another service which might give you better competitive offerings at that particular time. And this enables you to be flexible, to be adaptive, and to further develop or replace any systems or processes you might have. If you decide for your own that this year you want to go into cloud A, and next year you want to be cloud B, and over next year you do your own data center again because your cost determinations in 10 years are showing that it's cheaper that way, you need to have that kind of flexibility, and you need to adapt to those type of events and environments. So what does this mean a little more concrete? And we brought it down to you, and this is now really from ownCloud and from us here. We brought it down to 4 principles of digital sovereignty. Open source. Source code availability is necessary for security, adaptability, and interoperability, and assures that no vendor lock-in exists, and that you have the security in very critical environments, that you can look into the source code yourself. You can make sure that there are no challenges, no backdoors in there. Those are type of things you can do when source code is available. Second, the storage location. Of course, that's easy when it's in your own data center, but it already gets complex when it's in a certain country, and when you have health regulations, when you have government regulations, when you have laws which tell you which data you can put where. So certain storage locations are very important to you, and you need to be able to really understand where the data is located. That's also already important for any type of GDPR issues with personable, identifiable data. Yeah, for that in the European Union, but even in California, there are certain laws and requirements in place. Regulation, you need to be able to take care of the GDPR, but also of other laws and policies. Some things might need to be encrypted, etc. And sometimes you want to be able to make sure that you can operate your data on premises, in data center of your choice, or in a hybrid setup. And a lot of the services out there don't give you that type of flexibility. Of course, if data is regulated, if you have to take care of certain storage locations, you might still need to access that data from anywhere, and that's often legal to do under certain controls and restrictions in place. However, if you have some of your data which needs to be located in Saudi Arabia, some of your data needs to be located in the United States, and some of your data needs to be located in Europe, then you need to have the ability to have several storage locations, and you need to have federation between those storage locations. You need to be able to share data between those, and ideally you have the ability to access data from any of those instances running in your locations around the globe. And that allows multiple instances, of course, and then really easy sharing. So when you bring those type of things together, you're gonna come up with a matrix which shows you the levels of your own digital sovereignty. And that starts really with what we call a high level of dependency, or the other way around, a low level of digital sovereignty. In this section, in this level, you're really forced to buy or to stay where you are. You have almost no control over your data. You can only work with proprietary APIs. You can't add your own APIs on top of that. And you have a low transparency regarding data security. Most of the time, you just have to trust what your vendor tells you. Of course, you can make a contract, but there is almost no way to really control that contract, because it will be difficult for you to send an auditor there on site to understand where really your data is located, and if it's not shared with anybody else, and if it's truly encrypted the way they say it is. And a couple of examples underneath. The second level we call the medium level of dependency. This is mostly about collaborating partners from a relationship perspective between you and the vendor. You have access to your data. Data can be deleted at any time. There are open standards and APIs in place, and there are reliable contracts about who does what with whom. This is true for a lot of the on-premises offerings, including all the on-premises offerings from Microsoft as an example, with the Microsoft Office Online Server, with which we interoperate and provide collaborative editing as an example. But even with SharePoint and Exchange, you have some level of control in type of a partnership. It's also the case with offerings like OpenStreetMaps or ProtonMail or Mailbox.org, etc. So when it comes to the level of digital sovereignty, there you really have full control. Full control means that data can be used off the platform, so outside the platform as well. You have open documented standards and interfaces, and you have a GDPR compliant platform hosted in the European Union. And there are a couple of examples, including ownCloud, who fully meet this requirement. Okay, so next, let's look at this GDPR and security item a little bit deeper. and understand how US corporations really influence our sovereignty here in a couple of ways. So, particular of importance here after the so-called Schrems II ruling from the European Court of Justice in July 2020, which has ruled that the current rules of Privacy Shield are invalid, are the United States legislations of the Cloud Act as well as FISA. Cloud Act is about the law enforcement agencies. FISA is about all the security agencies, and both affect your data in many ways. It basically means that there is no legal base for the use of any type of United States cloud service, and there are imminent fines for storing personable, identifiable data inside United States clouds. And just this week, we got another report from the German data protection agencies. A group of them is building a task force in order to understand when and how they have to define companies in regards of that ruling and how to go forward with that. We really recommend to act pretty fast in that regards. Often people say, yeah, but the data is located in Frankfurt, it's located in Ireland, or wherever else inside the European Union it might be. However, under both regulations, that's not important of any kind, because the data, if long as it is accessible from the company, from the United States headquarters, it still has to be transferred. And that's the case, as far as we understand, for all the United States cloud-based services we're aware of. So it's really time to reassess your cloud strategies. And in order to show you how real that is, because the next thing we really get is, yeah, but no data has ever been transferred, etc. Microsoft, which I'm taking here as an example, is doing a transparency reporting about that on a bi-yearly basis. And what we see there is that under FISA, more than 4,500 Microsoft accounts were affected with requests seeking transfer of content. And under the Cloud Act and other law enforcement regulations, nearly 50,000 accounts were affected. So what we clearly see here is customer content disclosure happens. It happens under A, the Cloud Act, and B, under the FISA regulations. Of course, GDPR and security is one of the items to worry about. The other one, as we frequently mentioned, is really dependency. And there was a study also from Microsoft, also about Microsoft and the dependency of the German government on Microsoft spending. And from PricewaterhouseCoopers, PwC, it was determined that there is really a strong dependency on Microsoft products. There is a high dependency, which has a critical effect on information security, on legal security, and that really threatens the introduction of cloud solutions. And just last week, we got new numbers in that regards. The 2020 spending of the German government has skyrocketed to almost 180 million euros. And that's a very, very strong dependency on a particular vendor. And a lot of government functions are calling for less independency going forward. So a lot about the challenges, a lot about the classifications, the different levels, the particular challenges around the Cloud Act as well as FISA. But where do we really start with sovereignty? What do we do if and when we are in that position today? So I have a couple of good ideas for you what to do. And the most important thing is you need to learn which regulations apply to you, which regulations apply to you and your data. So in regards of the GDPR, that's often the question of encryption. Are you able to encrypt everything which goes to the cloud? And you need to keep the keys. However, that hinders a lot of the use cases we have and we suggest, like collaborative editing. So you might need a different platform for this personal data. You might need a different platform for your CVs from the people who apply to jobs, or for your existing employees and their skill sets. It's also a question of the integrity and resilience of your systems, the availability and access. What do you do if a cloud service is switched off, if you can't access it? Sometimes there are sanctions. There are sanctions even in Europe from the United States government, but also from other governments. So sometimes you might eventually be affected by that. What do you do then if your cloud service suddenly decides that you're not following particular rules, or you are determined to have a connection to a sanctioned party? And what is the transparency and the procedure in regards of the data you handle? So we have some ideas for a checklist in that regards for you. That means you need to look at who controls the hardware, where is the hardware located, of course, what happens with your company data, where is the data stored, who processes your data. Often that is actually transparently revealed. And how do you collaborate, and how do you comply with all the relevant laws? Those are the things you need to think about. And often, if GDPR data is affected, you also need to do a data protection impact assessment. Yeah, so that was a couple of ideas we really wanted to give to you here in order to understand digital sovereignty, in order now you know what to do next and where to really start with kicking those type of things off. And at the very last, a small example of a hospital, in this case in Iceland. That's the Landspítali University Hospital in Iceland, and they decided to safeguard their medical data with ownCloud. They are using a public cloud with Office 365 for a lot of the day-to-day sharing, and as an approach to lower the dependency and to make sure they adhere to regulations, they started to, for the medical data they have, to use ownCloud for that type of sharing and keep that under their own control. We have a success story on our webpage for that, and you're very welcome to follow that lead, understand where your data is located, understand your level of data sovereignty, do your data impact assessments, and if you need any type of solutions, any type of advice, please don't hesitate to reach out to us. Thank you.